right, hopefully you got that solved correctly there, or proven correctly rather, with your two columns using the segment addition postulate. Notice that this first part is always given. So if you're doing this on a test, writing down the given thing first is kind of like a free point. So make sure you do that. Let's look at another way that these can play out. So for this next example, we have to remember the vertical angles theorem. So vertical angles is just when you have two lines crossing, these angles across from each other are going to be congruent. So one will be congruent to 3 and 2 will be congruent to 4. And we covered that all in the past, but it's been a while, so we're reviewing it now. An example of what we can do with that is we can say, hey, if I know that these angles are vertical, then they must be congruent. And so, I could use that information to set up a little algebraic equality that 2x plus 21, I wrote backwards, 21 equals 4x. And then you could, of course, do a bunch of things and solve for x minus 2x minus 2x. 21 equals 2x divide by 2 divide by 2. So x equals 21 halves. But that's just to remember that vertical angles work like that. You can take these angles are congruent, so you can set them equal to each other in an algebraic equality. Expression of equality. All right. So how do we use vertical angle theorem in proofs? Let's take a look at an example. So here we are given, well, you know what? I'm gonna get my free point. So we have our statements. I'm writing in red. We have our statements. I'm going to use a 2-column proof here. And our reasons. Draw out my columns. And my first statement is going to be that angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. And the reason is given. Alright, now let's start thinking. I have to prove that angle 2 is congruent to angle 3, given that angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. Well, I know that angle 4 will be congruent to angle 2 because they are vertical angles. Oh, and the other thing that I meant to mention is you should really number these because we're going to have to grade them. And if you're really neat, they might line up, but a lot of times that's not the case. So if you can just number like statement 1, reason 1, statement 2, reason 2, that will make everything really good. So the reason that I know angle 4 is congruent to angle 2 is because vertical angles are congruent. I'll even kind of shorten it down. Vertical angles are congruent. Now let's think about what I know. I know that angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. And I also just figured out that angle 4 is congruent to angle 2 And my goal here is going to be to show that both angle 2 and angle 3 are congruent to angle 1. I could do the same thing, prove that they're both congruent to angle 4, but I'm going to do it this way. And so that's going to, I'm going to have to use the transitive property of congruence here. Here we go. So for step 3, if I know that 1 is congruent to 4 and 4 is congruent to 2, then it follows the transitive property that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. So now I just need to show that angle 3 is congruent to angle 1, and I'll pretty much be there. That is the transitive property of congruence. I guess I could just write of congruence like that. So for step 4, now I want to show that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. Well, and that's pretty easy because they're vertical angles. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. And now I'm almost there. That is, vertical angles are congruent. Finally, for step 5, well, now I know that 2 is congruent to 1 and 3 is congruent to 1. So I can go back to my transitive property and say that 2 must be congruent to 3. Now, you really have to take your time and think through these. So I've gone pretty fast. I would encourage you to pause this video, take a minute and think about how this works, because you're about to do something very similar. And you'll need to be able to write these kinds of proofs. So going through and really making sure you understand these, they can seem like kind of a mess at first, because it's probably a lot of stuff that's very new. But take your time, think through them carefully, come back and watch these videos again when you have to do a mastery check or an assessment on this. And really, really let it sink in. So there you go. On the next slide, you have a chance to do something similar. You are going to need to be able to do proofs using the vertical angles theorem, using the segment addition postulate, and using the angle addition postulate. Those are the 3 things that we are taking from chapter 2. All right. Good luck on the next example, and that'll be the last thing for this lesson. Good job making it all the way through, and I will see you in the next lesson. Have a great day.